Any good professor, any good teacher, in any kind of school, at some time during the semester, will ask their students to get up in front of class and give some kind of presentation. Now, when the teacher says this, that usually strikes horror in their students, because I think public speaking is the most feared thing people fear. But it is good to let them, because you remember what you teach. And I remember, even in the 4th grade, Sister Harriet told us, to our horror, that we would have to get up and give a project, a presentation on one of the states in the Union, Kansas, Illinois, everybody had a state to give. But Sister Harriet is very smart. She handed out these little sheets of paper that laid out exactly what it takes to get an A. Exactly what it takes to get an A. And exactly what it takes to get a B, what it takes to get a C. And in those days, we had D's too. You could lay out what exactly it would take to get a D on your presentation. But sure enough, someone in the back who was just used to skidding by raised their hand and said, "Sister Harriet, what does it take to get a D minus? What's the least I can do to pass?" Now, some of you giggle a little bit, but this D minus, this least, I think it's tempting for Christians, Catholics in America, to be a nominal Christian is just enough. That's plenty. You know, they say, well, I pray at home. I worship in my garden. I've heard that. I believe in God, and I pray sometimes, even read the Bible now and then. They're basically functional atheists. You know, my religion is very private. I keep it to myself. It is not a Christian faith, but it is a faith. But most of the time they presume when Judgment Day comes, I'm in. God is okay with that. That's a D minus. I'll be fine. Now, when we use this term, it's the least I can do, sometimes, kind of switch perspectives here, people will use that as sort of a term of humility, because they really are doing a lot, but they'll say, oh, it's the least I can do. People give me gifts at Christmas time. Oh, thank you. Oh, Father, it's the least I can do. But it was a sacrifice on their part. Sometimes they'll come and clean my house. And they'll say, you know, ladies will come and clean my house, say, oh, it's the least I can do. No, it isn't. My house is sometimes gross. And say, thank you. It's the most you can do, thank you. Or they'll give, a ticket to some ball game. I had a man once who was a mechanic in our parish, and he maintained my car, fixed it when it was really bad, and gave me advice on what kind of car to buy. And he would always say this, thank you, Max, for doing this. Thank you. He goes, oh, no, Father, it's the least I can do. But I think he was just trying to be humble, because really it's the most he can do. That's what he does. That's his time, talent, and treasure. Giving of himself, a sacrificial giving that maybe in a humble way he was saying, no, this is what I do. But I think sometimes when we look at people who are being generous and doing something small, we might assume, well, they are doing the least they can do. They're not giving much. It doesn't look like it anyway. The eyeball test doesn't look like it anyway. And we have 2 examples of that today. The 2 widows. There's a widow mentioned in the Psalm too. There's like 3. But the 2 widows, the eyeball test, when Elijah comes to the widow of Zarephath, he says, give me a drink of water. Oh yeah, and give me a piece of bread. I mean, it seemed like she gave him that. And it was like, oh, big deal. But as you read the wider context, as you keep reading, you find out she just has a little bit of flour. That's it. And she's going to make her and her son a little piece of cake, and they're going to die. They're starving to death. But he asks her to trust him, to trust in God, to give him something to drink and a little piece of cake, and God will provide for you. So in other words, she gives out of her poverty. She trusts. She gives out of her sacrifice to the man of God, Elijah, and God does not let her down. She's plenty provided for. But that took a total gift of self. Even though the eyeball test said, well, she doesn't give much. No, she gave all of herself. Same thing in the gospel. We have another widow. And the eyeball test looks at her walking up, sticking 2 pennies in the treasury. Cling, cling. And it looks like she's not giving very much. Looks like she's doing the least she can. But when the truth master points her out to his apostles, no, you see that woman? She is giving from her poverty. She's giving a sacrificial offerings. Don't look like it, but he knows. She's giving the most she can, not the least that she can. But a couple of good questions that we do have to answer. If someone were to ask any of us, what's the most you can give to the Lord? What is the most you can give to the church? Well, that is your very life. We have a name for that. They're called martyrs. To lay down their lives. Jesus tells us that. No greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. He not only told us that, he showed us that. This is what total love looks like. But short of being a martyr, which most of you will probably not be, what are we supposed to be giving? What are we supposed to be doing with our minds and bodies? Well, the church lays out some nice little lists. We won't go through all of them today. The corporal works of mercy, you've heard of most of these. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, give water to the thirsty, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, visit the imprisoned, and bury the dead. That's right. Those of you who have grandma up on the mantle, get her out of there. Let her do something dignified with her. But the spiritual works of mercy are at least as important. They're a work. Instruct the ignorant, comfort the afflicted, admonish the sinner, pray for the living and the dead. Those are all things we're supposed to be doing, supposed to be giving, sacrificing our time, talent, and treasure. But if someone were to ask any of us, like Pablo in the back seat, in the back pew, in the back desk, what does it take to get a D- as a Catholic? What does it take to get a D- as a Christian? Well, there's a list for that too. Billy, throw some of those up there. They're called the 5 precepts of the church. Well, I'm going to go through them and then we'll go over them a little bit. First one, attend Mass in all holy days of obligation. Go to confession at least once a year. Receive communion at least once a year. Roll it. Hello. Observe fasting and abstinence on those days and provide for the needs of the church. So let's go back to that first slide. So attend Mass on all Sundays and holy days of obligation. Sundays are holy days of obligation. But that's an obligation that Mother Church puts on us, and it is meant to be inconvenient. No one said that being Catholic would be convenient. But it is the holy days of obligation, the other ones, that can be very inconvenient. Sometimes it comes in the middle of the week. We might have to tell our boss, our teacher, our coach, whatever select team we may be on, I have to go to Mass. That's inconvenient. Now, sometimes it's really inconvenient. Like when Christmas lands on a Saturday or a Monday. That's maddening. Because then we have to have church on Saturday and Sunday, or Sunday and Monday. To which Mother Church responds, that's right, it is a little inconvenient. That's why we keep a crucifix on the wall to show us what inconvenience looks like. We're asked to confess our sins at least once a year. At least. You should do it more. And that takes a prayerful person. Now, John Paul II went to confession once a week. If all of you went to confession once a week, we would never get out of the confessional. But that's not a bad thing. So is a community striving for holiness. You have to come to Mass every Sunday, but you don't have to receive the Eucharist. But hopefully you strive to do that. And when it comes to the fourth one, and that is be obedient to the days of fasting and abstinence, guys, this is no big deal anymore. used to be stricter before the Second Vatican Council. When it comes to fasting, you should fast. But the church only demands that you fast 2 days a year, Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. And write this down, Ash Wednesday is not a holy day of obligation, even though that's the day we have most people in here. But when it comes to abstaining, that's only Fridays during Lent. That's it. That's only days, that's the least the church requests. But every Friday you should do some penitential action. Whether it is fasting, whether it's giving up a meal, whether it is abstaining from meat, whether it's giving up internet for a day, going to Mass, babysitting your hellion nephew. That's an act of penance. So look for those things to do that, because fasting and abstinence lead to self-mastery. It leads to self-mastery and freedom. And then provide for the needs of the church. That means that we have nothing to sell here. This is not a business. I can't sell sacraments. Do churches sometimes do that? Sometimes. Sometimes. They'll have fees for the use of the church. That happens. But these lights cost money. You don't want to know what the AC costs on a monthly basis. The elevator in the office is $4,000 a year to maintain. If anybody wants to just write a $4,000 check, we'll take it to cover the elevator. But I do have 11 or 12 full-time employees that deserve a living wage. And inflation goes up every year, as does insurance. But it depends on you to provide for the needs of the church. You can take that down. But I don't think God has ever called anybody to get a D-. He's never said, do the least you can, and that's fine, I'll take care of the rest. He gave his life for us so we can give our lives to him. We're not called to be skin of your teeth Catholics. We're asked to be great saints. Some of you have sacrificed much. You've been married, you're open to life. That's sacrificing much, your time, talent, and treasure. And that's why we hold up saints as our models and encouragement to ask the Lord each day, help us to be like them. Help us to be like you. Because you gave us the most, and we should be looking for ways to give you the least. But I'll end here with a little image that has become kind of joyful to me. When I go to Sam's or to the bank or to, I want to say it's Little Caesar's Pizza. I like Little Caesar's Pizza. Don't judge me. The road there is called Marlinwood. It's called Marlinwood. You take a left on Marlinwood. There's a little Lutheran church, and then there is the Walgreens and Little Caesar's Pizza. But between the Lutheran church and the Walgreens, there is a nursing home. And every day, most days, if you drive by there, there's this little man in a wheelchair. Sometimes two guys. One guy's in the parking lot of the Walgreens. And what are they doing? Just waving at people as they drive by. Just waving as they drive by. Now, this man is crippled. He's elderly. He's in a wheelchair. And he's in that nursing home. That's not the greatest place. I've been to that one. And I think somewhere in his little cell, he asked the Lord, what can I do for you? What's the most I can do? And then he received an answer. Why don't you go outside and do what you can. Do the most that you can. And it may seem with the eye test, oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that the least he can do? I don't think so. I think in his life situation, he is giving us the most. And he is answering the Lord's prayer and request. And pray that we can be like him, be brave enough to ask that question to the Lord. You gave us, all of you, what's the most we can give for you?